Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to look at Star Trek Attack Wing. Now this game is for 2 or more players, ages 14 and up, with the average playtime being about 45 minutes. Now, for those of you that have never heard of Star Trek Attack Wing or even Star Wars the X-Wing Miniatures game, by the way, I can't describe how similar these two games are. But anyway, for those of you that have never heard of this, basically what you're going to be doing in this game, you're going to be picking a faction, either the Federation, the Klingons, or the Romulans. You're going to choose a ship, choose a captain for that ship, and possibly even some upgrade cards to help them out in battle. And you can embark on different scenarios, or you can just have a straight-out, shootout as far as a dogfight is concerned, just to see who would win. There's a little bit more to it than that, obviously, so let's take a time out, take a look at the components, and see how the game is played. Okay, now keep in mind, these aren't all of the components. In fact, you've got more components in the box, more tokens, but this is more of a sampling of the different things that you'll need to know. To start off with, you've got 3 ship models here, all of them from the next generation era. You've got your Galaxy class ship, which is a Federation starship. That's the Enterprise D, for those of you that aren't Star Trek literate at all. You've got your D Deridex class Romulan battlecruiser, and you've got a Vorcha class Klingon battlecruiser. So there's 3 different ship classes, 3 different factions, Federation, Romulan, Klingon, and basically each player will be choosing one to represent. Now each ship has its own maneuver dial, and normally they're supposed to look like this after you assemble them. Unfortunately, my copy came with 4 of one piece and 2 of the other, instead of 3 and 3, so I'm unable to fit the Romulan maneuver dial together. I put a ticket in with WizKids, hopefully they get back to me soon with replacement parts. But anyway, each ship has its own maneuver dial, and this is important because each ship has its own unique abilities and maneuvers. As you can see, okay, well this doesn't apparently assemble well either. Yeah, this is not gonna bode well on my review. But anyway, here we go. So there's different maneuvers, like this one is a backwards one, and there's even a color here associated with how stressful the maneuver is. A stressful maneuver is represented by red, where a non-stressful or even one that would combat a stressful maneuver is in green here, and I'll explain more about that later. And these white ones are just your standard normal maneuvers with no penalty or anything like that. But now with each maneuver on a maneuver dial has a corresponding template, and as players choose maneuvers on their turn, they'll go ahead and move them with these maneuver templates. They'll just simply take their ship from one end of the template to the other, and like I said, I'll show you this a little bit later, but this will give you a general idea as far as how the two tie together. Over here you've got some plastic bases. Basically what will happen is, this is the very bottom of the model in question. You'll find the corresponding ship that you've chosen, place it right over top like this, and you'll see here it lists USS Enterprise D on one. Let me focus in so you can see it. Yeah, it says USS Enterprise D on one side, and on the other side is just your standard Galaxy class. You'll be able to pick what ship you want to be via these cards, which I'll get to in a minute. But it has a quick rundown of the stats of that particular ship, the primary firing arcs, what actions it can take, and so on and so forth. But you're going to put it together like this, then you're going to take these smaller white pegs and fit them into this hole, like this, just to assemble that. And then you're going to take your model, which has a little hole there on the bottom of the model, and then you're just going to fit that over top like this. Hopefully it cooperates. There you go. And there's your model. You'll be putting that on the table, and you'll be maneuvering this around. And just to give you another example, you'll be using your maneuvering template like this. If let's say that the Enterprise made a 3 hard turn, they'd start like this, put the template here, and then end up on the table over here like so. Now there is one thing I neglected to mention. There are these captain tokens that you can insert into the base just to remind players of who is captaining what ship. Up here along the top, we have a range ruler, and as players attack and defend in this game, they'll want to see how far they are away from their opponent or their attacker, just to see if there are any bonuses that get applied. If a player is in the 1, 2, or 3 range of another ship, let's say that the Enterprise is here and that the Romulan is, I don't know, somewhere over here, they would compare from base to base to see if they'd be in range. And in this case, let's see, the Romulan was out there. In this case, it is not in range, so the Enterprise could not fire on the Romulan cruiser. So you'll be using the range ruler to determine if another ship is within range. But you also have to keep in mind each individual ship's firing arc. Now, when firing the primary weapon, there are some bonuses. This is one thing I do like that the X-Wing game did not include. Right on the ruler, it tells you that the attacker gets 1 extra attack die if they are within range 1, and the defender gets 1 extra defense die if they happen to fall on range 3. That is with the primary weapon. With the secondary weapon, those range bonuses and penalties do not apply. Next up, we're going to go ahead and look at these cards. Basically, what's going to happen at the beginning of the game, even before you start, you're going to have to choose a ship. You're going to pick a model, obviously, but you have to pick one of these ships, and there are a few to choose from in the starter set here. You can choose between the Enterprise D. See if I can focus in so you can see it. But yeah, there's the Enterprise D you can choose between, or you can just pick a standard Federation starship. And each of them have special abilities and different stats. For example, the Enterprise D has 4 attack, 1 agility, 5 hull, and 4 shields. The other Federation starship is roughly the same, except that the shield value is 1 less. For those of you that have never seen these cards before, like the X-Wing, the Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game is laid out exactly like this. So those that have played that game will be familiar with this instantly. You've got your special ability, the list of actions that the starship can take on their turn, the kinds of upgrades they can equip, and their associated cost for equipping that ship into the fleet. Whenever you buy expansion packs, if you do buy expansion packs, you'll eventually want to add more ships to your fleet rather than just do a one versus one. And these point costs become more and more important as you have more ships to choose from, and more upgrade cards and more captains. Basically, each player will choose, players will agree upon a point cap or a fleet cap total. And I think the manual suggested 40 points for the starter set. But you'll try and get as close to that number as you can without going over, just so that both players are on equal ground. So you can choose a ship. There is a reference card for those of you that don't want to go through the different maneuvers on the dial. You can quickly look at and see what maneuvers this particular ship class has available to them. Once you pick a ship, you'll choose a captain to attach to that ship. You can choose between famous and iconic Star Trek characters, Jean-Luc Picard, for example. Each of those have a special ability. For example, each round you may perform one of the following actions as a free action, and just like with the ship cards, they have a cost associated with them, which you'll need to take into consideration whenever you're building your fleet. You'll also have a captain skill on the bottom left-hand corner. This is similar to the pilot skill as found in the Star Wars X-Wing game. But this becomes important during combat and during the movement phase. And there's other captains to choose from. This doesn't make any sense to me. Why Captain Jericho would have a captain skill of 1 when I think he's an admiral. Anyway, yeah, he eventually becomes an admiral, so he was in the episode Chain of Command. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. But anyway, getting back to this, once you pick a captain, you should be able to hopefully equip some of these upgrade cards. These grant your ship some special abilities. Data, for example, was an upgrade card, Geordi LaForge, and they each have a symbol on the bottom left, and that's important because your ships can only handle certain upgrade types. There's little chevrons here, meaning that these can be equipped onto this ship. So, getting back to this data, Geordi LaForge, Miles O'Brien, Worf, and so on and so forth. Other upgrade cards like this, Engage or Antimatter Mines. And that is it for, like, just say the one faction. If you choose the Romulan, it's the same deal. You've got different ships, You've got your own reference guide there. You've got different captains, different upgrade cards, and the same thing with the Klingons. You've got ships here, different stats for them. You've got captains, and you've got your upgrade cards. And what you end up choosing will ultimately define what kind of game you're going to play. This smaller deck over here is the damage deck. As players take hits throughout the game, they're first going to lose their shields, which is represented by these shield tokens here. But once they run out of shields, they'll start taking hits to their hull, and that's where these damage cards come into play. A regular hit will deal a player a face-down damage card. A critical hit will deal a player a face-up damage card, which lists some type of penalty that the player will have to observe for that particular ship. For example, reduce your primary weapon value by 1 to a minimum of 0. For an action, roll 1 attack die. On a hit or critical hit result, flip this card face down. So you don't want to get critical hits on your ship if you can help it, but there are sometimes ways to combat them. As far as these dice are concerned, there are 5 red and 5 green. Red being your attack dice, green being your defense dice. And again, if you've seen the Star Wars, or soon have played the Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game, these will be somewhat familiar to you. You've got your red attack die here. You've got a regular hit. Let's see, critical hit is that. This is the equivalent to a focus action. This is the battle stations icon, which I'll explain in a little bit, and the rest are all blank, I believe. And then on the defense die, you've got your evade result, which is this, and you've also got another battle stations. Again, this is the equivalent to the X-Wing's focus die result. Last but not least, we have some tokens down here. As players move their ships on the board or on the table, they'll be allowed to take one action, assuming that they are not quote-unquote stressed. And I'm gonna be transposing Star Trek and Star Wars terms. I believe the right term in this case is auxiliary power. Basically, whenever a ship performs a red maneuver, they become stressed or receive an auxiliary power token, preventing them from taking an action on their turn or another stressful maneuver on their turn. But yeah, that's one of the tokens that you'll see. There are some other ones over here. If the starship doesn't have one of these auxiliary power tokens on their ship, they can perform a number of different actions, assuming their ship allows them to do so. But you've got a cloak ability here, you've got an evade or evasive maneuvers token here, and you've got a scan token. There's also a targeting lock. Basically, the ship doing the targeting will put a blue letter next to their ship, and the player being targeted or the ship being targeted will place this red one next to their ship. Critical hit tokens, you place them next to ships just to remind players that a face-up damage card was dealt, and so on and so forth. Okay, now a game is broken up into a series of rounds, and basically a round consists of the planning phase, the activation phase, the combat phase, and the end phase. I have sort of a game set up here. It's obviously not perfect. Basically, each side will put their ship on their side of the table. Normally it would be a 3x3 playing field. A mat does not come with the game. I have one for my X-Wing set, so I may feature that in a future video. But basically, players will try to imagine a 3x3 playing grid, put their ship on one side of it, and then choose, again, their ships, their captains, their upgrade cards, take a number of shield tokens equal to their shield value on their ship card, and so on and so forth. But again, keep in mind, this is just for illustration and example purposes. These point values don't add up the way they're supposed to. Now the first phase, or the planning phase, what each player will do, they'll go ahead and secretly choose a maneuver on their dial. So the Klingon player will go ahead and pick a maneuver on the dial, put it face down, and the Federation will do the same thing, put it face down. And that will actually end the planning phase. Next up, we have the activation phase. Basically, movement is resolved in order of captain skill, from lowest to highest. In this case, this new doc Klingon captain has a skill of 5, while Jean-Luc Picard has a skill of 9. So he would resolve his movement first. And let me just back these up. What will end up happening, he'll flip his dial over, find the corresponding template. It's a 3 hard turn, so he'll find the corresponding template that matches this, put it on the table like so, and then move his ship to the other end of the template. Again, this isn't going to be perfect. Now, normally a ship gets a free action after moving. However, this was a red maneuver, and because of that, he has to place an auxiliary token on or next to his ship just to indicate that he did take a stressful maneuver. As a result, he cannot take an action while his ship is quote-unquote stressed or has that auxiliary token added to his ship. So that will actually end his part of the activation phase. The Enterprise will now do the same thing. Let's just back this up. He'll go ahead and reveal his one slight turn this way. It's a green maneuver. If they had a auxiliary token on the ship to begin with, he'd get to remove it because it's a green maneuver. But in this case, it didn't matter because he didn't have one. So now the Enterprise gets to take a free action, and the action it can take depends on what kind of actions are listed on their card. You can take a number of different ones here. Let me see if I can find them. This evade token, for example, adds one extra defense die, or allows the player to turn this in to act like an evade result on a die roll, which I'll show you in a little bit. Let's see what else here. Scan. This allows the player to, or allows their opponent to roll one less defense die. So the Klingon ship has one agility on their card. With this as an action, the Klingon would not be able to roll any defense die. Let's see what else the Enterprise can do here. The battle stations card, the action rather, he can take a battle stations action. I think I have a token somewhere in the box here. There it is. I could get it out of the box. Awesome. Okay, yeah, this battle stations token, if you take that as an action, whenever you roll your attack die, and if you roll this symbol, you can give up your battle stations token, sort of like a focus token in Star Wars, to change that to a regular hit, and that will affect all dice that you roll. So if you roll like 3 of these, you can give that up and then turn them all into regular hits. So there's that. So there's different actions that you can take depending on the situation available to you. Target lock, blue, red, and that allows the attacker to re-roll any number of die that they want after rolling their initial attack. So yeah, let's just say that the Enterprise does this battle stations. Now, before I move on to the combat phase, I guess I should have looked at these cards a little bit closer. The Enterprise was able to take an action because they didn't have an auxiliary token. However, Jean-Luc Picard's special ability, each round you may perform one of the following actions as a free action. So on top of the regular action, the battle stations action, the Enterprise could take the scan action, which would then complement Geordi LaForge's special ability. If your ship has a scan token beside it, you may force one ship you attack this round to re-roll one defense die of your choice. So that would actually benefit the Enterprise for doing that. So now we're at the combat phase, and that is also resolved in order of captain skill, starting with highest to lowest. In this case, Captain Picard has the highest and would get to shoot first. Again, you'd look at the range to see if there are any bonuses. They are at range 1, so the attacker would get an extra attack die. So the Enterprise would take 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 1 for being at range 1. However, this IKS Matha card, any ship attacking you at range 1 rolls 1 less attack die. So this card cancels out one of those attack die, so we're left with 4 again, which is just the primary stat value. So we're going to take 4 attack die and roll those. And, okay, this is a good example. Let's just say this was a hit instead of a blank. We've got 3 of these battle station icons. Let's just, the Enterprise could trade in this battle stations token, just discard it, and flip these all over to hits. So now we've got 4 hits. Now the Klingon would be able to roll 1 defense die. He has 1 agility or 1 green value on his ship card. But the scan here, if your ship has a scan token beside it, you may force 1 ship you attacked this round to re-roll 1 defense die. But on top of that, the scan token prevents the enemy ship from rolling 1 attack die. So in this round, the Klingon would not be able to roll anything. Now let's just assume for the moment that it could roll something. He'd roll 1 defense die, and let's just say it came up as an evade. There we go. So we've got an evade, we've got 4 attack. This 1 evade would cancel out 1 of the attacks, but these 3 would make it through. As a result, the Klingon ship would lose 3 of its shield icons. When a ship runs out of shields, these are just simply put back in the box. But once a ship has run out of shields, that's where these damage cards start coming into play, and they'll be added to the ship, either face up or face down, depending on whether or not it's a regular hit or a critical hit. And when the number of damage cards equals the hull value, that ship is destroyed. So that will conclude the combat phase. The Klingon ship is unable to fire back because the Enterprise is not within the firing cone. Lastly, we have the end phase, and this is like a cleanup step. Basically, any unused tokens that might be on the battlefield, like your battle stations or your evasive maneuver tokens, different things like that, they'll be removed from play. The auxiliary power tokens do stay with the ships, though, as does the cloak if the enemy ship hasn't used that. So, yeah, there's different things to look at, but just keep in the back of your mind that the end phase is just your cleanup phase. So that completes 1 round, and rounds will continue until there are no more ships left on the battlefield, or until a particular scenario is completed. And the manual here does have some scenarios in the back of the book in case players want to take a look at that. Basically, see if I can find one. Advanced rules. Obstacles, missions, here we go. You can do different missions. The game has like a new source of dilithium. It tells you how to set up the game. This is for 3 players. You've got a 2-player, another 3-player game here. This is the chase. So yeah, different missions exist, as well as different expansion packs to up your game a bit. Keep in the back of your mind though that these miniatures do cost a good bit of money. Each ship is like $15. And some of the Star Wars minis can range up to 30, 40, and I think even the capital ships in that game will be like between $60 and $90 a piece. So these miniature games can get expensive if you intend to expand upon it, but you can play this game as is without a problem if you just want to pick the starter kit up. And I think it's retailing between $30 and $40, so I think it's a good value. So at any rate, that is the a round example. I apologized if I did something wrong. This was just more of a example to help you get used to how the game is played and what you can do on your turn. And there you have it. That's just a very brief look, and I mean brief look, at the Star Trek Attack Wing game. Like the Star Wars X-Wing game, it can get a little involved, but once you get used to how all of the different actions work and what the tokens do, different things like that, it's relatively easy to pick up and play. I do have a Star Wars X-Wing miniature video series out on my YouTube channel, and I think I may end up doing the same with this if there's enough demand for it and Vinny likes it. I'm assuming he will, because he can't get enough of the Star Wars game. Speaking of which, if you've played the X-Wing miniatures game, you can play this. There is barely a difference between the two. Some different things, like there's a 6 maneuver maneuver template here. If ships overlap in this game, they can still target each other. There are captains. In X-Wing, there are just pilot cards. In this game, you get a ship and a captain. So there's an extra level of complexity there. Nothing too fancy, though. There's generally more attack dice in this game being thrown as opposed to X-Wing, and less defense dice. It's just because the ships obviously are a bit bigger. The Enterprise D would dwarf an X-Wing or a Y-Wing, for example. So I guess that would stand to reason. But for the most part, it's a solid game. Again, I'm a little miffed about the mix-up with the connectors, but other than that, I'm satisfied with how everything is. You can check out my full review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com, or you can simply click on the links in the below description. That'll take you there as well. Keep an eye out on my YouTube channel. I may feature this game more. I'll definitely go into more detail than I have here. I didn't feel like spending 45 minutes to an hour explaining everything, but I'm sure I'll be doing that anyway in future videos. So with that being said, this is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.